Hey, thanks for joining us for episode 14 of the Unlockable Podcast. We're talking all about remakes, remasters, and ports, and how they all differ. I think a lot of people are confused on the naming of each, and while Hannah and I aren't experts by any means, we did our research and came up with some solid definitions and information for you guys. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to give us a good rating wherever you're listening to this, and let's go. Welcome back to the Unlockable Podcast. I'm Christian. Joining me as always is Hannah.
Hello.
Hannah, we have a very special episode today, don't we?
Yes, we do. As always.
As always. Yeah, I don't know what makes this one more special than the others, but I'm looking forward to it. But first, what the heck have you been buying and what have you been playing, Hannah?
All right. Well, after the announcement of Pyra and Mithra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 into Smash, I was like, you know what sounds really good? It's going through another playthrough of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And I know how crazy that is, because that's like a 70-hour game, and I have a lot of other games to play, like Ys Origin, I know. Complained about it last podcast, but like I couldn't stop myself. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to invest 70 hours into the game. So you know what I'll do? I'll just watch the cutscenes. It can't be that long, right? Guess how many hours of cutscenes there are in Xenoblade Chronicles 2?
Oh my gosh, I didn't think it would be multiple hours. That's crazy.
14 hours.
Oh my goodness.
14 hours. That's like 7 2-hour movies. That's crazy. And fully animated, fully voice acted. And I don't know why, but I posted this on my Instagram and like nobody cared. They're like, yeah, that's normal. I'm like, 14 hours? That's a lot of hours.
Put it on your story?
No, I actually made like a whole post about it. Not that I need an excuse to post anything about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, because I love that game and I'll do it anyway. But I was absolutely amazed. And everyone was just like, eh. Anyway.
As someone that doesn't play JRPGs, that's pretty amazing. It's pretty incredible.
It is amazing. So, yeah, I watched all 14 hours of it one weekend. And then I was like, man, I missed this game so much. So I'm also playing it again.
And, of course, you're not going to skip the cutscenes, right?
No, of course not. They're so good. How could I not? Other than that, that's literally the only thing I've been playing. Which is really sad because I've already played it. But, yeah. And then what have I bought? Not a whole lot, but I did pick up today the new Smash Amiibo. That's Bayleth, Banjo-Kazooie, and Terry. They came out today. And I know everyone was... Gosh darn it, Marbles. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Gosh dang it. Hold on. Hey, I was on a roll, you Get off the box. Yeah.
I hope we leave this in. Please.
Okay. And I know everyone was super concerned about it, and I know I complained in the last podcast before that, but the Monster Hunter Amiibo were also supposed to come out today, and they did, but GameStop decided to delay mine by a week, so I'm paying $20 for shipping and my Amiibo getting here a week late, so that's fun. Your turn.
It's always something with those freaking Amiibos.
Yeah. I have a lot of things to say about it, but your turn.
I bought a lot of crap. I bought so much crap. I made a video about it. I had so many packages stacking up that I mean, you saw the video, but my birthday came and then we had to remodel the house. And so I just had packages stacking up. I never opened them. My friend was over and he was like, hey, you know, that's a lot of packages. Maybe you should make a video opening them all. And that's exactly what I did. So I'm not going to sit here and list them all. A lot of people have already seen the video. But the biggest thing and the thumbnail of that video was Super Metroid Complete in Box. I am actually in love with that game. And I'm so happy that I got one. And it's in pretty darn good shape. Really happy to have that bad boy CIB.
I thought you already had that game. Or did you not have it CIB?
I have it loose.
That makes sense. That was a very good video.
I didn't even buy the... thank you. I didn't buy the whole game. I actually just bought the paperwork and the box and everything. It's... so, yeah. I already had a manual, so I do have an extra manual. But... I got Super Castlevania 4, which might have been brought up on the last episode, so disregard that. And then I got Collection of Mana yesterday, actually. I got the Collection of Mana for Nintendo Switch, my first Switch game in a little while. My first modern game in a little while. Looking forward to checking out the OG Trials of Mana.
Quotes on the word modern there. I mean, they're all old games.
Right, yeah. But one might say they are ports.
What?
Hint, hint. Alright, so I've been playing I've played Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance. I'm almost done with it. It's a Game Boy Advance game I got recently. Probably should have put that in the bin buying. I got the Castlevania double pack, right? Game Boy Advance combo pack. Pretty cool. And been playing Harmony of Dissonance. And then I beat Ratchet and Clank into the Nexus. I haven't played my PS3 in maybe a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades. Like, it's been a long time.
You played it on the PS3?
Yeah, dude. I don't know what came over me, but just got in the hankering for some Ratchet and Clank, and like a random one. It's not even start with the beginning for some reason.
Wow, how retro of you.
Pretty good game. I played through the Flintstones one night on Genesis. That's another game. Oh no, I mentioned it in the video. Anyways, I played through the Flintstones. Pretty easy Taito platformer. Pretty cool though. I'm a big Flintstones guy, so I just wanted to play through it. And I've been playing Call of Duty.
Wow.
The usual.
Normie.
Literally hate you. Hannah, get me through the news because I have nothing written down.
Alright, I have a lot of news actually. So first, Nintendo is partnering with Niantic, which is the company behind Pokemon Go, and they're making a Pikmin mobile game. They didn't really...
Instagram, according to Instagram, you are partnering with both Nintendo and Niantic, right?
Yeah, so I guess partnering must be a keyword or a trigger word, because Instagram literally flagged my thing and was like, hey, if this is a partnered post, why don't you tag your partner in it? And I was like, what? I'm not partnering with any of them. I wish, but no, I'm not. Anyway, this was released in a tweet by Niantic, and they didn't really have that many details about it. They just said, and I quote, they said, imagine exploring the world through the wonder of AR alongside all of your pals, including your new Pikmin friends. So it's probably going to be something related, obviously, to the AR functionality that you see in Pokemon Go, but it's not going to be Pokemon Go because there's like 7 different kinds of Pikmin. I don't think you're going to be catching them. Certainly not with Pokeballs. But it's going to be some kind of game that uses the AR technology, which I thought was really interesting because Pikmin it's a very niche title. So I didn't think that would be one of those games that Nintendo would make, a whole mobile game out of, but maybe that's they're trying to, dig up more interest for the games because it is so niche. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting. And then I'm sure if you've been on the internet at any length of time for this year, you know that Mario dies in a few days. And what I mean by that is it will be March 31st is the last day that you can play Super Mario 35 and buy both Super Mario 3D All-Stars and Fire Emblem insert long title here.
Wait, why are they taking 35 off?
Well,
what the heck?
Yeah, because Mario dies. I'm pretty sure they're taking Mario 35 off. Because it's no longer the 35th anniversary.
Okay, it's not the 99th anniversary of Tetris anymore.
Yeah, well, I thought that was dumb. Odd too, but I mean, honestly, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't. So, like, in order to play this game, obviously, you have to have a lot of interest in it. There has to be a lot of people online. So, if you only offer it for a certain amount of time, it guarantees that people will be like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta play this before it leaves." You know what I'm saying? But like, then again,
there are people playing Splatoon 1 still.
I know.
Hear it.
Then again, it's Super Mario, so like everyone's gonna play it because it's Super Mario. So I don't know. But yeah, it's gonna die. But it's also, I guess, it's the last day technically that you can buy the Super Mario Game & Watch. But obviously, they're not gonna like send back all of the copies to Nintendo. Like, you're still gonna be able to buy it. They're just not making anymore, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's fun. Look forward to Mario's death in a few days, depending on when this comes out. Next is obviously, no. Dang it. Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter Rise is out today, and its Amiibo are out today. Everyone except for me. Reggie is leaving GameStop's board of directors in June.
Oh, yeah. Reggie, bro. He can't even fix that place. He said, I'm out of here.
He's one of 8 people that are leaving.
8? Oh, nobody cares about the other 7.
Yeah, I know. But, yeah, that's interesting. I guess GameStop's going down. Or he's like, this company's too corrupt. I'm leaving before they ruin my name.
That's crazy.
They just can't afford to pay him billions. I don't know. This is a scary thing in the news. Actually, there's 2 scary things, all related to Sony, so that's not surprising. Okay, according to IGN, and I quote again, if your PS4 clock dies, you will lose your ability to play games on it. Regardless of them being digital files or the disc, your PS4 will not be able to run them. This is according to trusted hacker Lance McDonald. This is because trophies on the PS4 need the console's internal clock to work correctly as to prevent users from changing the date and the time values and exploit the PS4's trophy system. So how terrifying is that?
When I heard this, my first thought was like, why can't you just change the battery? But I guess it's got to be more intense than that if people are freaking out about it.
I guess. Well, it was my assumption after looking this up that once you take the battery out, like, you lose all your saved files. So, I mean, it's the same thing that happened, I guess, with Pokemon and the SNES games that have the battery in it, but it is my understanding, I've never done it, but I've seen people do it, that if you plug your Pokemon game into a Game Boy or whatever, and you have it on while you replace the battery, like, you won't lose your save file. So I don't.
Well, that's pretty cool.
So
yeah, we're talking about death today. That's the topic. Mario's death is planned for a few days, and you can count on your PS4 dying in the near future.
Which is scary. I mean, I don't... Like, what would I do if all of my Nintendo save data on my Switch was deleted? I mean, wouldn't that... that's just... It's a scary thought to even think about. I don't even like to think about it. Next thing in the news is, according to Polygon, a report published Monday said the PlayStation Store for Sony's PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita, and PlayStation Portable will close... will close for good in July and August, making digital copies of games for those platforms unavailable for purchase from then on. Which is also another terrifying thing, which is one of those things... It's a disadvantage for digital games. Because there are so many games that are digitally, like, exclusive digitally to the PS3, Vita, and PSP, and they're going to be gone forever.
You know, we talked a lot about this a few episodes ago, but I was talking to my friend Craig about this recently. I don't understand why the Vita is dying already. Like, yeah, okay, the console's dead, they're not making games for it anymore, but people love the Vita, and I have no doubt that they're still profiting off of the Vita's shop. I could see the PS3 getting taken down, like, it's about that time, and the PSP, I didn't even know it had a shop, but the Vita, I think it's too soon.
Yeah, I agree. I can see the PSP, I mean, Jesus, that's been forever, but yeah, the Vita was a little odd for me, too. But all of those games...
Are they all one shop? They can't be.
That's a good question. I don't know. I doubt it, but they totally could be. I don't know. Good question. Thanks for bringing that up. Maybe you look like an idiot. Are under-researched.
Alright, what other Sony news do we have?
That's it. That's all I got for the news.
Oh, okay.
We ended on a sour note. Sorry.
Lots of death around here.
Death.
Yeah, so do you want to do this little transition that you wrote down?
Yeah, I do, kind of. Okay, so the idea for this podcast actually stemmed from a question. I don't know if you picked it up or if you remember hearing it, but it stemmed from a question in the last podcast. And I asked, like, why are ports so looked down upon? Or, in other words, like, why does everyone hate ports? I mean, personally, I like them, but it feels like everyone's like, oh man, why is there more ports? Like, we want new games. So yeah, we decided to make a whole episode on it, because apparently a lot of people are very passionate about this topic.
Yes, we reached out to the community, and we got a lot of people's responses on their thoughts and their opinions. And by community, I mean Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your responses and for checking out the show and everything.
Yeah, it was. I asked the question on my Instagram, and I got so many responses. That's literally all I've been doing all day is answering people's responses, and I love it. I mean, that's why I made my account, was to talk to other people about it. So thank you if you responded. It's really nice.
And we're going to be sharing a lot of responses today at the end, but also sprinkled in throughout the episode. And before we get into it, the first thing we want to mention here is that we are not experts, right, Hannah? Are you an expert?
No.
No, we hardly know. No, I'm not going to say that. Go ahead.
I like to say I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but I'm an expert on nothing. Does that make sense? This would be in that category here. I'd like to think I know some things about it.
Right. Yeah. So I'm certainly not an expert. I thought I was, and then like me and Hannah before this episode talked for 90 minutes on the phone, like about what a remake is and what a remaster is, and so
trying to classify things.
We have done our best to make categories that we think are fit and subcategories, and yeah, I think it's going to be a great episode. But why don't we kick it off by you telling me your thoughts on ports?
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but I will absolutely say it again. I love ports. I think that more games for more gamers is never a bad idea. And especially for me, like, I've only owned Nintendo consoles, and Nintendo, their consoles aren't as strong as, PlayStation and Xbox consoles. So we tend to not get a lot of things, or if we do, it's after those after the game's release on other consoles. So for me, when I see a port of a game like, I don't know, Doom or like Skyrim or something that you would never dream would run on a Nintendo console, I love it. I mean, like I said, more games for more gamers is great, especially for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just thinking the reason you love them has got to have a lot to do with the fact that you don't get a lot, like, you don't have every console, so you don't get to experience it the first time around.
Right.
So yeah, that totally makes sense. But as my opinions have changed a lot recently. Contrary to what the internet will lead you to believe, you are a human and you are allowed to change your opinion on things.
What?
So I think my biggest... I've been a hater of ports recently because I had a Wii U, unlike a lot of the world, and I also had a Switch, and 90% of the Wii U's library, that's an exaggeration, was ported to the Switch. And for the first while there, I had, my options were Super Mario Odyssey and a bunch of Wii U ports, and I wasn't a fan. I complained a lot, and
you felt personally offended.
I was always saying things like, why isn't the company working on this game? Like, why aren't they putting the resources towards this game? Like, I already played this game. I don't freaking want to see this again on the Switch. I'm not spending $60 again. Like, and I didn't. I was not a hypocrite in that regard at all. I definitely did not pick up Mario Kart again. I never picked up New Super Mario Deluxe again. Nothing. The one exception, which isn't an exception at all, because anyways, it was Pokken Tournament DX. Not only did I get it for free, but I also didn't play Pokken Tournament, or I still don't have it on the Wii U. So I guess that's the one exception. But I wouldn't say that I hate them. I would say that I hated Wii U ports for sure. I do think that there are a lot of positives to, even though I hate the Wii U ports, I think there are a lot of positives for, like, obviously people are getting to experience one of my favorite games ever made, which is Super Mario 3D World. Yoshi's Woolly World got ported to the 3DS. There was that, I freaking loved that game. There are so many fantastic Wii U games that, like, yeah, I was being selfish by not wanting them, but in reality, it is a positive thing that more people are getting to experience these AAA titles. This is not something I would have said probably 3 years ago. 2017, 2018, Christian was just not happy with Nintendo. I needed some more games.
Well, good for you for growing.
I'm good at that, I think. Swallowing my pride and realizing that I made a mistake. I do think ports are good in other aspects, not just talking about Wii U and Switch ports. But I think we'll get into all of that. We've got a lot to cover today.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, let's get into it. We have definitions to start off here. We like to start with our definitions, and we have kind of narrowed it down to two major categories, which are ports and remakes. And do you want to talk about those definitions?
I can talk about those definitions, but once again, let's just preface by saying that we are in no way experts. And while we were doing not research, but just talking about the podcast, we realized that there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of things, that are a little confusing about what's what. So yeah, we have a few definitions, and the first one is a port. And a port is when the developer moves a game from one system that it was originally on to another system. So obviously ports are very common, as games are usually designed for one platform and then moved to another. And an example of this would be Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, which was from the PS3 to the Switch. So they didn't do anything to it, they just directly moved it over.
Right.
And then the next definition is remaster, which is a remaster is a type of port where the original game is updated to work on newer systems and with better performance. So the developer uses most of the original code, if it's available, and usually just improves the textures and frame rates, but keeps the game mostly intact otherwise. And then it may also include DLCs or like a director's cut. An example of that would be Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X2 Remaster for the PS4. And then finally we have a remake, which is usually a ground-up rebuild of a game to upgrade it for modern systems and consoles. Usually tries to be as faithful to the original as possible, although that's not always the case. An example of that would be Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Absolutely. Neither of us have played it, but we can tell you that that's 100% true.
I mean, it says it in the title, so I hope the developers know something.
So yeah, we're saying ports and remakes are the two major categories. Subcategorize ports into one-to-one ports that have additional content, and then straight up HD remasters. Right. Originally, we were thinking ports, remakes, and remasters could be different categories, but when you really think about it, a remaster is a port. So yeah, that's why we're subcategorizing it there. So yes. We talked a lot to the community, and why do people hate ports, Hannah?
All right. Well, I feel like you're a good one to start this off with, though. I mean, you already talked about it a little bit, but
I did talk about why I hated ports for the Wii U. I think a lot of it boils down to people having played it already, and people are like, dang, like, I don't care about this. I'm not glad that everybody's getting hyped up about it. We should all be hyped around this new game that should be coming out instead. I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for this. I don't think my hatred for ports was justified very well previously.
All right. Well, I do have one. Actually, this was submitted by Johnny Vintendo on Instagram. Thank you for submitting your opinion. He said he used to hate ports because he used to think it was just lazy business practice and it was just a money grab. But he says now that his opinion has changed because he gets to watch his kids play the games that he enjoyed when he was younger. So that's nice. So I think that's pretty much the main reason why people hate them. People think it's lazy, like why aren't they working on a new thing instead of working on something old? But I don't think people realize that a lot of the companies that port these games over, like they're not, like Nintendo's not porting over any of their games. They always, I can't say always, but they usually give it to other like third-party studios. Like I know one of the big ones recently was Panic Button. They worked on Doom. I believe they also worked on Doom Eternal. So it's not like Bethesda's working on these ports. They usually give it to third-party people. And then the next one is just a cash grab. I can see that. Why people think it would just be a cash grab. But I also
Let's wait for that one, I think.
Okay.
Oh, you can say what you're going to say.
No, I have it. I realize I have it written down somewhere else. But yeah, lazy cash grab. I think those are, the main two critiques of why people hate ports.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't say I ever felt like I was thinking of it as a cash grab. Laziness, absolutely, but I don't know. I never felt like it was a cash grab. But here, this is the part where I was going to tell you to save it for. Why do companies make them?
Mm-hmm.
So, first is obviously the money. It could be a cash grab, I suppose. How does it affect the gaming industry? Okay, so I kind of have an interesting look on this. So, aside from just like the money, I think companies make them because it can be an incredible marketing tactic. Something I've noticed looking at Crash Bandicoot is that they made the Insane Trilogy. They got the nostalgia pumping. They made Crash Racing. Half new, half old game. It's like half nostalgia, half new, awesome game. Did amazing. Both games did freaking amazing. And then they waited a year or two and Crash 4 came out. And it's a fully new sequel. And it's a reboot. And the name was It's About Time. Like, it was perfect. Like, it was the perfect marketing tactic.
Mm-hmm.
The sales were great. Ratings were great. People loved this game. I think that is why companies... I think that's one major reason why companies make them. Or if that's not a reason yet, I think that more companies should look at that formula. I think that that's like a really solid thing that Activision did there. My other example, or the other thing I wanted to bring up with this was Square could totally be onto this formula behind the scenes because they have made the Secret of Mana remake on PS4. That was like at least 5 or 6 years ago now. They had the Collection of Mana. They had Trials of Mana remake, and then they had, or coming out soon is Legend of Mana HD Remasters. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy that they're putting all this mana out there. I think that they could totally be making a new game. If they're anything like following this Activision formula here. I think that'd be awesome.
I agree.
And then I wrote one more thing. I think gaming companies are aware that the retro gaming market has blown up.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that they can get in on that is to bring their old games back. But since so many people have the ability to simply get a PS1 and Crash Bandicoot, for example, companies can't just port the games. There's got to be more. There's got to be some incentive. So Crash Bandicoot wasn't just a port. It was a remake. It was a completely like new game. But it also stuck to the same formula, the same levels, the same design and everything. But the HD graphics and just everything was new about it, and it was a completely new game almost. So yeah, I think that... yes, your turn.
We're like exposing some deep company secrets here. Okay, so my first point was obviously money. Obviously, they know, like you said, that the retro scene is exploding, and they know they can make some money off nostalgia, which is... I mean, obviously, when people sell games, like retro games, they're not making any money from that, so I think they've recognized that. And then my other thing was to get new players into their franchises. So like you said, they've been releasing a lot of Mana games, and that's kind of what got me into the Mana games. Like, I don't have... Secret of Mana on the SNES, and I don't ever plan to because it's really expensive. But I did buy the Collection of Mana, which has it on there, so I decided that I'm going to start playing all 3 of those games in that collection, so that's one reason. And then actually, at Zach_Daily15 said, ports can be hit or miss depending on what you are looking for, but are a necessary part of today's gaming and give companies more time / more funds to make new games. So I think he has 2 good points there. One, it gives companies more time. I think that's actually really observant. So I have a good example for this. So Skyward Sword was released in 2011, right? And the Wii U came out in 2012. And Breath of the Wild was always advertised. Like when it first, I believe the time it was first announced, it was played on the Wii U, right? So it was always supposed to come out for the Wii U. But then obviously the Wii U didn't do so well. And they knew that a Zelda game wasn't going to launch right when the Wii U launched. Like, it wasn't like anything with the Switch, because Skyward Sword had come out in 2011. So it would probably be 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years before the next Zelda game came out. And they knew that. And I guess with the Wii U not selling very well, and the fact that I think Breath of the Wild's development was taking longer than they thought, they released both Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD. I believe they were a year apart. I think Wind Waker came out first. So they were giving us something to tie us over until we could get the next big Zelda adventure. I think that was really smart. Obviously, those copies of those games sold like wildfire because everyone loves Zelda. Well, I can't say that, but most people love Zelda. It's a beloved franchise. So that's one of those things where they gave us more time, to tie us over. And then
that is a very good point.
The next point he brought up was about companies like needing to make more money before the next release. An example of that would be, I don't know if this is true, but like this is what they said, is Suda51 in the release of Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. So I don't think this is considered a spin-off title. It's just kind of like I believe it's an insert between the second and the third game. But he said something along the lines of like, if this game sells well, then we'll start working on No More Heroes 3. So I guess it was a more budget title, not quite so big as No More Heroes 3 would be, so they just wanted to, see if that sold well, get some money, and then put that into the development of No More Heroes 3. Don't know if that's actually a thing, but that's what they said. So.
Right, him saying that is kind of, you could interpret that in multiple ways. I got the vibe that you just said. I didn't get the vibe that they were out of money and needed to pay for the third game.
Not necessarily out of money, but this actually kind of goes into my next point, which is, I think another point would be, like, companies want to see, like, they want to gauge people's, not thoughts, but, like, their interest in their games. Obviously, if no one bought No More Heroes, or Travis Strikes Back, No More Heroes, they're not going to make a No More Heroes 3 if no one bought that one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, obviously
absolutely.
If the game's not very popular, they're not going to release another one. And I think an example of that, I know Nintendo's not a small company, so they can afford to do this, but with the port of Pikmin 3 Deluxe, that is such, like I said, a niche title, and Nintendo knows that, so I think they released Deluxe of 3, not only because not a lot of people played it, but because I think they wanted to gauge people's interest in it. Obviously, if there's no interest in 3, they're not going to make a 4. So I don't think Nintendo wants to spend millions, or I don't know how much it costs, but millions of dollars to make Pikmin 4 if no one's interested in 3. And I know Nintendo's a big company, so they can afford to do this, but I think this is especially, like, important for third developers, third party developers and indie developers, too. They don't necessarily have the budget for one of their big titles to fail, or money that, if
absolutely.
No one wants to play their game, they're not going to spend to make a third one or a fourth one because they don't want to go bankrupt. And then I kind of just mentioned this one, but it gives players the opportunity to play games from a system that didn't sell very well. Obviously, the example of that is the Wii U. We all know how that went. So Nintendo ported a lot of the games. And I mean, the Wii U had amazing titles, so I can see why Nintendo would want to, bring those titles over so more people get to enjoy them.
Yep, mature Christian sees it as well.
And for me, if I was a developer and I saw that my game sold like 5 copies, I'd be so depressed.
Yeah.
And in no fault of your own, just that nobody wanted the console that it was on. So it breathes new life into all of these games that Nintendo probably spent millions on. And then I think that's it.
So we talked about why people hate them and why companies make them, how it affects the gaming industry. Let's talk about why people buy them.
All right. Would you like me to start? Actually, you know what? You go. I'm tired. Need some water.
I just have a few small points here. First thing, it's been mentioned a couple times, nostalgia is powerful, and I think that is the number one reason why people buy them. I should probably use something besides Crash Bandicoot. Spyro Trilogy, the Spyro Reignited Trilogy it's easier. Oh, okay. If you collect everything for a certain series, oh my gosh, all right, I'm talking too fast here. Let me just slow it down. So nostalgia is a powerful thing. That's one point. The next thing I have here is if you collect everything for a certain series, you're going to buy every new game that comes out for said series. So that's probably a smaller audience, but not as small as you might think. I think there are a lot of video game, like, quote-unquote collectors right now. People that are buying... People that love a certain series. Like, everybody loves Mario and Zelda, but, like, slightly more niche things. So if a game comes out for a certain series, you're going to buy every game for that series. Even if you've played it before, even if it's just a port, a remaster, like there are just people out there, and a lot of them that will just buy it. Like I just did that with the Mana games. Like I'm going to play one of the 3 games on that series, on that collection probably, because I want every Mana game. If they ported... No, that's enough. I don't have to talk about Rayman every single podcast. Then the last thing here, it's easier. So why do people buy them? It's easier than purchasing a PlayStation from OfferUp that may or may not work, and then finding a copy of, let's say, Spyro 1, 2, and 3, which also might not work. So you're making it easier for these nostalgic individuals to go and find the games that they already want to play, that they're already nostalgic for. And the companies are profiting from that. So I think those are a couple of major points there.
I agree with that. I actually have that written down in mind that, like, I mean, I just said it earlier, but obviously when you sell games on eBay, the original publishers and developers aren't getting any of that money. So I said that most people are not going... I mean, I know it's not available there now, but most people aren't going to spend $200 on Paper Mario. They could just play it on their Switch for less, you know? I know that game's not available, but that's a pretty extreme example. $200 for a GameCube game. No thanks.
But it's selling.
Yeah, it is. And Nintendo's making $0 on it.
They should change that for people.
Yeah, man. I agree. You're preaching to the choir here, man. I know. And I also said, actually, there was another submission by @Cloud9Tendo. He said he is in favor of porting games and anything that makes games more accessible for new audiences, since not everyone can have a gaming museum of old in their living rooms. We are definitely exceptions to that rule. We do have gaming museums in our living rooms, but most people don't. He also says that periodic re-releases prevent what's happening with Nintendo 64 and GameCube games, where sellers are having a field day pushing the prices up on people who are just trying to play the game, which is true. Just said that. But yeah,
I guess that's true. That's what you said about Paper Mario. Yeah.
I think that's all I got here. Oh, and this is just something that I thought was funny, or not funny, but whatever. A lot of these people who buy these remasters and stuff, they don't know that they're buying remasters. They just think they're buying a new game. Like I told you earlier, moms who are buying Mario Kart 8 Deluxe aren't thinking, oh, this is a port of a Wii U game. No, they're just gonna buy Mario Kart for their child, you know?
Right.
So why people buy them? Because they're good games and they sell well. It's Mario Kart, you know?
Yep, absolutely. All right. So we are gonna move to best and worst ports, remakes, and remasters that we have each played. So I've got them all listed out. So how do you want to do this?
I only have a few, so if you have more than me, you could probably start and say one or two.
All right. I'll do my best ports, and then you can do whatever. It doesn't matter. So I've got some best ports I've played here. I got Mega Man Legacy Collection. So straight up 1-to-1 port. Played it on the Xbox One. Plays great. Panzer Dragoon Orta is a port. Ikaruga, Castlevania Anniversary Collection, Buster Bros Collection, the Zelda Collector's Edition. Like, all of these collections are just 1-to-1 ports. Yeah, I was thinking that's like the only way I've played Majora's Mask, and plays great. Literally anything from the Wii or Wii U eShops. I played Super Metroid on the Wii U Awesome port. Yeah, that's a pretty uneventful section there. What do you got?
So best ports I've played. Bayonetta and the Bayonetta 1 and 2 collection. That game runs great, looks great, never finished it, but looks nice. Next one would be Dragon Quest Builders 1 and 2. That game looks absolutely beautiful. I know it's not technically like super graphically powerful, but it still looks really good as a port. You wouldn't know the difference if you hadn't played it on PS4 and Xbox One. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which we talked about a lot. Basically every Wii U game that was ported over. So that includes Captain Treasure Tracker, Tokyo Mirage Session, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, FE.
You played that?
I did not, but you're right. I shouldn't have mentioned that here, but
best ports we haven't played.
I'm sorry. I was just mentioning Wii U ports. Because I've seen how it looked. You know what? Never mind. I'm not justifying myself. And then technically, Breath of the Wild is a port of the Wii U game because it was always designed to be a Wii U game. Oh my gosh! And it is, and it was ported over.
Did anyone swipe up? Did you have conversations with people about that one?
No, I did not. Why?
I don't know. I feel like it's not. I feel like it's not.
A port?
Yeah, they released the same day.
Well, it doesn't matter. They designed it for Wii U hardware, which was originally what it was going to be on, and then they ported it to the Switch.
All right. I don't think I know enough to argue about that, but please drop a comment below.
And then the next one is Ys 8. That one looked good, ran good. And then this was kind of our gray area, which I don't know if we made a category for that, but all of the Mario ports from the NES and the SNES that you can play on the Game Boy Advance. And the regular Game Boy, actually. Some include Super Mario World from the NES. Nope, SNES. Don't know why I said that. Super Mario 3 from the NES, Dr. Mario, and Yoshi's Cookie. And the last one is the one that I've played. It was actually one of the first Switch games I got, which is Cave Story Plus. It's a very good game.
What is that like? I've heard of it.
It is 2D, and it's a platformer.
Already it's doesn't sound like your kind of game.
It doesn't, but you know, it was there was not that many games for the Switch at launch, and I saw this one and I was like, oh, it looks pretty good. It is good. It's really hard though. And actually, a remake for this game was actually released on the 3DS too, but I think it was called Cave Story 3D. But yeah, I didn't play that one. Obviously, I played the one on the Switch.
Ports. Best remakes for me, definitely Pokemon. So Gen 1, 2, 3, all fantastic remakes. I actually never finished Alpha Sapphire, but Leaf Green, Fire Red, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Chef's Kiss on that one. Mm-hmm. Trials of Mana I played last year. Fantastic game. Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. Tony Hawk I just played like a month or two ago. Man, you're going to freaking have a blast. I know I said it already.
Yay.
Fantastic remakes. Super Mario Advance. So this is one that Hannah just said was a gray area. She didn't mention this one specifically because, well, I don't know why, but I think that it is a kind of a remake, but kind of not. So this is super gray area. It's like, if you've ever played Super Mario Advance, it's got, it's a port of Super Mario Brothers 2, just to be clear. I know the numbering is really confusing, but it's got save points, and it's got like completely new designed sprites and levels and everything. It's like a totally new game almost. Like, I feel like it's as new as the Crash Insane trilogy was for Crash, but I don't know. Did we say Crash was a remake?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
It's very, very gray area. A lot of this stuff is.
Dark
I mean,
gray.
unless they like specifically tell you like, oh, it's running on a new engine, or like these character models are new, or like how would you know unless you're like a data like a hacker or like a data miner?
Right.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just dumb. I don't know.
Right. The Xenoblade example was really good for that. Best remasters I've played: Halo Master Chief Collection. Super cool that you can switch between old graphics and new graphics with the touch of a single button. I absolutely love that.
It is super cool.
Rare Replay has some HD remasters. I'm playing Kingdom Hearts right now, the final mix. I don't know if there's any like 1.5, 0.8, 0.7 numbers in there. I freaking hate their naming system. But I am playing the original Kingdom Hearts in the final mix. And that is a gorgeous remaster. And you can skip the cutscenes. So when you die and you go back to a boss, you don't have to sit there for 10 minutes and watch that crap. Oh my god.
I thought you were going to say you skipped them the first time.
No,
God,
no.
What are you playing for?
Resident Evil 4 I'm playing. I've been taking a major break from that game, but that's obviously a PS2, Wii, GameCube era game that I'm playing on PS4, and it looks amazing. The controls are better. That's a really good HD remaster. And Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was obviously a Dreamcast game. Got brought to the GameCube. I never played the Dreamcast version, but I know there are some... I don't know if the Chow Garden was on the Dreamcast. I don't know if the multiplayer was on the Dreamcast, but there's definitely some new stuff on the GameCube release, and it's a really solid version of the game.
Did not know that was considered a remaster.
Yeah, as I'm saying it, I don't know if it's a port or remaster now that I think about it.
Well,
it seems more like a port. Oh, yeah, right. That's a subcategory. It seems like... I don't know. Probably not a remaster. Do you have any bad ones that you've played?
Well, hey, man, I didn't say my remakes yet.
Oh, my gosh.
Come on, man.
Anna, please tell me your remakes and remasters.
Okay, well, you said a lot of them, but the first one I have is Lynx Awakening. I think that was I think it is Nintendo's most recent remake.
Might be.
So that game came out first on the Game Boy, and then I got re-released again on the Game Boy, but I think it was a remaster. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, the remake came to the Switch just recently, and that one was really fun. It's weird because it's a 1-to-1 remake. Does that make sense? Like, if you see a piece of grass in the old one, it's in the same spot in Link's Awakening. Just everything looks different.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's literally exactly the same. Every piece of grass is in the same spot. Every character is in the same spot. So everything's the same except for just it looks better. And it does look a lot better.
So why is that a remake? Because it's a new engine?
Because it was completely made from the ground up. Like, they didn't keep any of the... They kept the placement of everything, but everything, like all the models and
that's crazy.
Is new.
These definitions are crazy.
Yeah, I agree. So it's a 1-to-1 remake. And then you didn't mention this one explicitly, though you did say Gen 1, is Let's Go Pikachu.
Oh, yeah.
That was a super good game. It's a remake because obviously it follows the same patterns, like you do the same things, but obviously the throwing of the Pokeball to catch the Pokemon's different. Obviously you can walk around and you can see the Pokemon actually on the screen. And I was trying to write this down, but it didn't make any sense, so maybe I can explain it a little better. But this remake of Pokemon felt like the version that I was playing, like, in my head as a kid. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that's a cool way to put it.
Like, this is what Pokemon felt like when I was playing it as a child. It felt like it was what it was supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the graphics were there. I understand there's a lot of controversy around it, but that's how it felt to me because I really liked it. And then you mentioned this a little bit, but the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So going into this, I had absolutely thought this was just a remaster. Like, they just made the textures better, the characters better. It's actually not. So this game uses completely new character models, an updated menu, and battle HUDs, or HUDs, depending on who you are. It features a remastered soundtrack that you can actually be swapped for the original, which was really cool. And this game has a bonus epilogue at the end that you can play, which obviously was not in the first one. And this game also runs on a completely different engine than the Wii game did. So I guess that makes it a remake. But then I don't know. Like I said, there's some gray area, but I think this one's definitely classified as a remake.
according
That's
to
all I
our
got.
definitions, the biggest key here is that it's using a different engine, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that pretty much makes it a remake right there.
Yep. That's all I got
That's
for
it?
those, though. That's it. That's all the ones I can come off the top of my head.
I don't have a lot of bad or lazy ones that I've played, but a couple that came to mind last night when I was making these notes. Rayman 2 Revolution, most people really enjoy it, and I was just not a fan. I thought they changed way too much. I actually don't know where it falls. I didn't research if it has a different engine or anything. My guess is that it is a port, probably somewhere near a remaster. There's a lot of added features, changes the game quite a bit, but it's still the same levels. I wasn't a big fan of that. And then the other one is a collection on the Nintendo 64, Midway's Greatest Arcade Hits. And I'm a huge Joust fan, and growing up I played Joust a lot, but I had never played it on an arcade cabinet. I only played the N64 version. I was like, oh, this game's great. I went and played the arcade a lot growing up, or like more recently as an adult, and I go back to play that one, and it's just awful. It's tragic. And, when you think about porting games to the Atari 2600 back in the day and the NES, Pac-Man comes to mind for Atari. Like, they're just not even the same game, but they're still ports. That was just the best that they could do with the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
I think ports, we probably should have mentioned it a little bit, but ports have definitely changed in that regard in the last decade, 2 decades. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, also, I guess I should have mentioned, I don't know why I didn't, but the remasters and or ports of Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD, those were good games. They upgraded the graphics and they changed some things in the game, so I think we classified that as a remaster, not a remake, because obviously it's the same game, but not just a one-to-one port, right?
Right. And let me tell you, I played Wind Waker a few years ago, and as I was collecting those Triforce pieces, and like, it was a nightmare, and I really wished that I had the Wii U version, because I heard that they fixed the heck out of that part of the game.
Yeah, they did fix a few things. And then bad and lazy ones that I played. I think I said this last time. If you ever want my opinion on something, always ask me like a month later, and then I'll give you my real opinion, because I'm one of those people that gets caught up in the moment, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, especially with movies and stuff.
Movies,
but
especially.
I'm going to walk back my word on Super Mario 3D All-Stars was like the best thing ever, because looking back on it, like I said last time, I don't know if the pandemic affected it or anything. I guess we'll never know, but in hindsight, it did seem a little lazy. I feel like they could have done a lot more. They probably would have charged a lot more, though, I guess, if they like completely remade them or remastered them. But basically, they're just ports of the games. So, like I said last time, there was actually freaking debug cubes and when I was playing through Sunshine.
Yeah.
Definitely could have gotten rid of those. And another thing I played while I was playing recently is low poly mode, which is what happens to your character, like either when you go far away from the screen or something's just in the background, you're not going to see it. Like, low poly Mario walking around in Super Mario 64 is so noticeable. He turns into like a freaking pencil. It's hysterical. And in HD, you can really tell that he's there. I didn't even realize he was doing it in Nintendo 64, but it looks really bad. And yeah, that's pretty much all. That's the only thing I could think of.
Sounds like they lack polish.
Yeah, it was a little unpolished. I mean, for $20 a game, I guess it's not that bad, but like, they definitely could, and I think they should have done a little bit more.
Next up, we have games that deserve or would benefit from getting a complete remake.
I have some bangers for this one, not gonna lie. Actually, one banger.
Yeah, I've been starting. Why don't you go?
Alright, so my first one is the original Legend of Zelda on the NES. Now, in a documentary about the making of Breath of the Wild, I don't know what it's called, The developers actually tried out many of the mechanics from Breath of the Wild in the first NES game to see like how they worked, how they would work, or like how they looked. I don't know if you saw it, but it was really cool. He was like
that sounds like an amazing documentary though.
He was in obviously classic 8-bit Link, and everything around him was in little sprites, and he was wearing a blue tunic, and you could like cut down logs and like burn them, which is obviously something that you can't do in the original. So I was thinking how absolutely amazing like a full 3D remake of this game would be, like a Breath of the Wild style. Not necessarily like being able to climb over anything, although that would be cool, but just seeing everything and all the sprites remade in 3D and being able to walk around that world. And I don't think this is technically considered open world, but like you could go anywhere or do anything and complete any dungeon in any order in that game. So I don't know if that's considered open world. I mean, obviously it was limited by the technology.
They should hire you. That's actually a really cool idea.
Yeah, I think that would be. I mean, that would be. Could you just imagine how cool that game would be? And a lot of people would get reintroduced in the game, like we've been saying before. But obviously, it's on Nintendo Switch Online. But gosh, that would just be so absolutely amazing, and it would make people who didn't like the no dungeons in Breath of the Wild happy, because it'd be like a traditional Zelda game, but like also plus 3D. So like it'd be the melding of both the modern Zelda fans and the retro Zelda fans.
Yeah,
I think that'd be really cool. And then my next one and my last one is Kid Icarus Uprising. So this game released on the 3DS, and it was developed. Actually, I don't know if it was developed. It was designed by none other than Sakurai himself, which is the man behind the Smash Brothers games. And I'm not sure I don't think it sold as well as they were hoping it would. So I think that if they ported it to the Switch, it'd certainly make me want to play it. I mean, I'm not going to pick it up because I think it's pretty expensive on the Switch or on the 3DS right now, but I would definitely play a remake of it. It was brought over to the Switch.
Yeah, that was like a pretty close to launch title, or it might have been a launch title. That's a great idea. I never even... I forget Kid Icarus exists with its 2 games, 3 games in the whole series. Like, that's interesting.
But he's in Smash, so like you think that more people would be interested in him.
What do I have here? So I kind of categorized my listings here. As far as games that like would benefit, pretty much things that are restricted to arcades. So I recently went to an arcade here in Houston called the Cidercade, and they had crazy, like, I'm expecting totally Frogger, Pac-Man, all the like common stuff, but they had some amazing things I'd never seen before, and they had some like shmups and stuff that like you don't see anywhere. But I played this game, Ninja Baseball Batman, and it just looked like it belonged on. I know, right? It's a totally Japanese game. It was a beat 'em up that had nothing to do with like playing baseball, but you were a bat, like not Batman DC, but a bat space man. So you were holding a bat and beating people up.
So not like Batman, but like a bat man.
Exactly. Obviously, Hannah.
Like,
super cool game. I didn't play it a whole lot, but like that's something that like probably no one listening to this right now has ever heard of and could totally benefit from just not being restricted to an arcade. Like very few people have this arcade cabinet. And as far as I know, it's never been ported anywhere. I did a little searching after I got home. But another one, The Punisher from 1993. Really awesome. Apparently it's an awesome game. It technically I stopped writing this note because it did not actually get ported over to... You remember that Capcom fighting stick thing that came out like 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
The really expensive one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought The Punisher was on it, but it's not. But yeah, The Punisher totally needs to be ported over. It was... So this goes back to what I was saying last topic, but there was a Genesis port of the game, and it's just not the same game at all. It's like completely different. So yeah, that one. And then rare and expensive games absolutely would benefit from getting a complete remake. Half the Sega Saturn library. There are so many JRPG fans that would just love to have these games on the Switch or the PS4, I think. And I wrote Hagane on SNES. The Pocky and Rocky games are supposed to be really awesome, and they're just thousands, hundreds of dollars. I mean, it's just crazy that no one can play these games right now.
Thousands of dollars? Jeez.
I guess the reason I said thousands is because there's a complete in-box Pocky and Rocky 2 at my local store for $2,200, which is kind of wild, but...
Oh my gosh.
I wrote Japanese exclusive games. I don't know a whole lot, but I do think they would benefit from being ported, like, biggest example, Mother 3 or whatever. And I wrote Rayman Trilogy, but we're just going to keep moving. And that's that. We have pricing points for ports, remakes, and remasters. So why don't you talk to me about the whole Nintendo situation there?
Okay, so if you've been following Nintendo's like release of these kind of things, it's super weird and super confusing. I don't know how they come up with it. So Nintendo, like I've said like 1,000 times, they just released Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and ports of what's the other one? Oh yeah, Super Mario Galaxy. Right. So if you split that up, it was a $60 game. So you split that up, it's $20 each, which seems a little expensive. Like $20 for a Nintendo 64 game and like a Wii game. Like, I don't know, it seems a little weird. I guess they're just ports, so that's okay. But then you have like the release of Xenoblade Chronicles, which is a complete remake that was $60. I guess that's a little more justifiable. And then you have the HD remaster of Skyward Sword also coming out for $60. So I really don't know. You know, it's confusing, right? Like, how do they determine what's going to be $60 or what's going to be put in a collection, or like, I don't know who comes up with these ideas.
They just know that they can charge whatever they want, and they're gonna get people to pay for it.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, I'm gonna buy Skyward Sword and literally everything that comes out Nintendo. But like, do you feel that there's a difference? Like, there should be a price difference if it's just like a straight 1-to-1 port or a remaster or a remake?
I do. I do think 1-to-1 ports are worth less than developers going in and putting in all this time and effort to literally remake a game. I do.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I hate to bring up Skyward Sword again, but it's just the example that comes to mind first is, how can you determine what an older game should be worth? Like, Skyward Sword is still a mainline Zelda game. It's still going to take you just as long to finish that game as it did with Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. So why should the price be diminished if it's a Wii game, if it's still a mainline Zelda game? Does that make sense?
So, I mean, it should be... So Twilight Princess HD was probably $60, huh?
That one was $60, yeah. And Wind Waker, I think, was $50.
Yeah, I mean, when you're porting a Wii game to the Wii U, like Twilight Princess, that's nearly the same as bringing all these Wii U ports to Switch and charging $60. You know what I mean? It's just one generation difference.
Yeah, but why does 2 generations people are like, nah, this shouldn't be $60?
Right. I feel you. I'm trying to answer it. I don't know if I can. Yeah, that's crazy.
So I think it's super hard to determine that. I mean, even as a fan, like, I'm willing to pay $60, so I am going to pay $60. So I guess it just depends on how much you want to spend on it. Obviously, I'm not going around buying all of the remasters or remakes, but obviously I pick and choose which ones I want, but
yeah,
which I guess is the whole point. But I just think the pricing is so weird. And in other companies, usually when they release games, remakes included, it's always like never full price. Like, the SpongeBob game that came out was a remake, right? And they still didn't charge a full $60, I don't think.
No, I don't think it was $60.
So is it just that Nintendo appreciates their stuff more, or... I guess so. But yeah, I just thought that was a point to bring up. Like, what are you comfortable paying? I guess is what you're gonna pay.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I wrote down the just as like to compare along with that point, but Tony Hawk 2 games for $40, completely remade.
Mm-hmm.
Trials of Mana was $50, completely remade, and Collections. Oh no, I didn't write anything else. That's it. So yeah, just something to think about there. Even Activision and their money-hungry selves only charged $40 for the 2 Tony Hawk games. It's crazy.
He's crazy. So it's all over the place. Does it matter like what IP is worth more? Like obviously Zelda and Mario are worth more than Tony Hawk is, and maybe Activision, and I don't know. I really don't. I just thought it was a question to pose to the audience.
It's hard to compare Nintendo to anyone else.
It is.
Out
You're
there.
Right. That was probably a bad comparison.
Do you think we're gonna get a new Tony Hawk? Like, you think that they're doing the whole Crash formula right now?
I kind of hope so. I mean,
I could see 1
would...
and 2, 3 and 4, and then like 6.
6. Just skip over
because
5.
5 was tragic. Apparently, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I ever played 5. But 2 will always be my favorite, just because I'm super nostalgic toward that. But if they release a 5 or a 6 and they put it on the Switch, I'll buy it. Why not? If they just give us the same formula that they've been going with, and just add like new characters, new tricks, and blah 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 blah, I'll buy it. Although, you know what they should do? Is they should bring over Tony Hawk's Underground too, because those are really good games too. They should do a 1 and 2 collection. That would be sweet.
Well, if they're just gonna keep remaking those, it's gonna be a while before we get a 6. But yeah.
Well, unless they give their IP to someone else to develop, and they're already working on 6, how do we know they're not?
What a conspiracy. Well, that's all I got for that. One of the last things that we're going to bring up here is the next generation console upgrades. So currently there's just a very interesting thing happening, free versus paid. The one thing I wanted to ask, is this fair? Is it fair to have to pay for upgrading your game from your PS4 to your PS5, or the same thing for Xbox? And when we were talking about this, I realized this is technically a remaster. So according to the definition of a remaster, it's the same engine, but you're getting FPS boosts, you're getting better graphics and performance things, and that's just all a remaster is. So you can take Control, for instance, right now, and pay X amount of money to play the ultimate. I don't freaking know. There's like an ultimate version of the game, and you can play it on your PS5. But if you owned it on PS4, you can't just straight up play it on PS5. You have to pay. And to answer the question, is this fair? Well, you're paying for remasters left and right, so I mean, it only makes sense from a very technical standpoint that you're going to pay to have this game remastered for your new console. And there is similar things happening for NBA 2K21. Apparently you have to buy the Mamba Forever edition of the game. And similar thing with Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. I don't actually know what the difference is with that game. I guess you pay $10 and you're allowed to play it on your PS5. I don't know if there's any performance boost. There's got to be. There has to be.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't know. So something you brought up. Do you want me to talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned before the show, you said, is this the future of gaming? And you brought up an example of Madden is an annual game. What if instead of paying $70 every year, you upgraded the game you currently have for $30? And I thought that was a really interesting concept. I said that a lot of companies are probably not making a lot of money, or they're probably not making more than $30 per game anyway when a physical copy goes out. At least not after like the first week, because Madden comes out and it immediately drops, maybe not immediately, but it drops in price a couple weeks later, and the companies are already not getting the same money that they were getting from the get-go. I don't know. I just think we're only so far away from digital games, and I do think that one day, I think you really made a good point here. I think one day everything is just going to be, okay, I own Madden, and it's going to be like, do I have the latest roster of characters? Like, do I have the 2021 Houston Texans, or am I still playing in 2020? Like, I feel like that's what it's going to be like. So yeah, it's something interesting to think about. But that's all I have for this section. I'm sorry, I think I took everything.
That's okay. So yeah, you got my opinion pretty good there. So in the future, obviously digital's coming whether we like it or not. There's already digital only consoles. So instead of, which by the way, $70 for a game seems a little expensive.
It's so much worse than $60.
It is awful. So basically 10 years down the road, right? Like you said with the Madden. I mean, those kind of series probably are going to be the only ones that benefit from this, like online games, like Call of Duty and Madden and all those sports games are probably the only ones that are going to be able to do this, because no one's going to pay for a $30 upgrade for a Zelda game. You know, we want like a whole new
right, you're not going to get your upgraded Mario game.
So yeah, so it's basically just all of these sports titles. So you pay, $7 up front or $60, whatever, and then every year they're like, okay, well, do you want the new characters and the new updates and the new, graphics or whatever? Then you pay $30 or $40 or whatever it is, instead of buying a whole new game. But then again, at the same time, they're going to try to keep selling you a $70 game to make more money. But
yeah,
for a consumer point of view, I feel like since it's digital anyway, nobody really wants a physical copy anyways, I think the $30 upgrade makes sense. Or whatever it is.
Yep.
Because they don't need to make a whole new game. They just, need to upgrade it or remaster it or whatever it is, or port it to a new system or whatever.
Do you remember when games jumped to $60?
No. Actually, I was going to ask you before the podcast started, how much did Wii games sell for?
So, I remember when Wii games were $50 at one point, and then they jumped to $60. So, I went to GameStop one day, and I was really hyped for the new Guitar Hero, because I was obsessed with Guitar Hero in the Wii days, and I had got like $100 for Christmas or something, and saved it, went to GameStop, and I was like, alright, I'm going to buy this game, I'll have like $50 left over. I wasn't thinking about tax or anything. I walked out of there with like $30, $35 in my wallet, and I was so hurt because, first of all, I didn't count for tax, and secondly, he told me the game was $60, and I was shook. I had to see if I even wanted the game at that point. But yeah, this was Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock. Yeah. No, it's funny that I remember like that exact day though. That was like a changing my life kind of day right there.
See, I don't know if I ever personally bought a Wii game like at a store. Like I always think I got them as gifts, or like I went to GameStop and bought them secondhand. I don't think I ever remember paying for them, so I don't remember.
Right.
Wow,
yeah, I mean, we certainly weren't working at that age.
No, I certainly was not. I was like, what, 10? 12?
Oh.
The good old days. No, I guess I was older than that. I was probably like 12 or 13. I just know that everyone had one. You weren't cool unless you had one.
The Wii and the DS, king consoles right there.
Yeah, they were.
We want to wrap this episode up with some responses from the community, though. So, Hannah, while I pull up mine, do you have yours ready to go?
I do.
Let's hear it.
Some of these were ones that we didn't necessarily know how to categorize, but I thought that were pretty good, insightful comments. So this one by Corefish Collects, like the Pokemon Corefish. He had a really good perspective, and he said, digital stores make ports and stuff more acceptable. A release of classic games for modern consoles would have cost nearly full price 2 console generations ago due to retail stores being the only way people got games. There's no way Walmart is stocking a $20 remake, but they would if it was $40, $50, or $60, obviously because they make more profit. But now releasing a game digitally allows for cheaper remakes, since sub $20 games are really common on digital stores. So like I said, I think this is a really smart observation. So basically what I take away from this is that digital shops on consoles allow for more cheaper ports and remasters to be released. Like, if companies don't want to charge a full $60, Walmart is not going to stock a game that's going to sell for $10. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And plus companies aren't going to make a physical copy of a game that's $10 anymore if they don't have to. And no one's making money in that case. So, of course, they're just going to release it on the eShop or the PlayStation Network or whatever. I think that was really smart. I had not thought about that perspective, but it makes sense. It's like one of the only advantages to digital stuff. And then I have one more, and it's very long. Would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
All right. So from @RetroHill_zone, he says, definitely depends on the circumstance. How old is the game? Is it worth remaking? Is there any additional content? Is the additional content enough? How much does it cost? Is it just a single game or a collection of games? So that was a lot of questions. We addressed some of those earlier. But then he says a lot about Pokemon, which I think is really good. He says, I think Pokemon is a really good series to look at for this, given that literally half of their mainline output is remakes. Gen 1 and 2 were warranted remakes, since the originals were quite clunky and outdated, and the series has evolved a lot since then in terms of mechanics and balancing and such. And in both cases, the remakes are the definitive versions. However, once we hit Gen 3, I don't personally feel the same way. I think the originals hold up well, and the remake loses a lot of the charm, as well as a massive decrease in difficulty. And what they add just isn't very good for the most part. And I think it's worse than the original. I never played Gen 4, and I'm not interested in the upcoming remake, but I did play Soul Silver, which is of course built on the Gen 4 engine, and it's still excellent. I fail to see why it needs remaking. I think the Gen 3 and Gen 4 remakes exist because it was expected that they would make them, and that they would sell, so they made them. Not because they had any real desire or passion to do it, just because they wanted to. Not because they had loads of creative ideas on how to take those old games and improve them, breathe new life into them, and make a definitive version of that generation, just because they know it's easy money, because nostalgia always sells. Very insightful, I think.
You know, that he really did make a lot of good points. It does seem... I mentioned I hadn't finished the Gen 3 remake. I don't even remember how far I got in it, but I agree the first two absolutely needed to be remade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't need to be remade. People can still play those games and like live life just fine. But the upgrades they made were like super necessary. Whereas Gen 3, Gen 4 looks like a straight 1-to-1 port almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could play Gen 4 right now and it wouldn't feel very dated. You have your freaking running shoes, which is more than you can say about the first two games. Yeah, I see what he's saying there.
Yeah, and I wasn't super impressed. I think we talked about it last time, but I wasn't super impressed with the announcement of Diamond and Pearl remakes. I mean, those games look good on the DS. Like, the only thing they really added to them is to make them look like quasi 3D-ish, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And a chibi little character. But, to each your own. I know people are excited about it. I mean, Pokemon's going to sell regardless. Everyone's going to get them Pokemans. But yeah, I thought that was really insightful.
He said they were, he felt like 3 and 4 were made because they were expected to be made, which that, very true, my man. Good call there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially 4. People have been complaining, like, they've been expecting it, man. That's really spot on there, man.
And then when it's announced, they're like, I don't like it. Why'd they do it? So, I have a few more on my end. First, we have last.elixir.games on Instagram said, remakes have thus far been a success. Blueprint has been a leader for remakes of Shadow of Colossus and Demon Souls, and I would trust them to remake any of my favorite franchises. Capcom and Square Enix have also proven themselves capable of making remakes like Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. Remasters are simply a cash grab from publishers and developers. They render a game and make it slightly better for current gen consoles, hoping that we will double dip, and as a stupid gamer myself, I often do. Same. But I wish they wouldn't unless it's some spectacular enhancement graphically and or performance, but that typically means it's not a remaster, it's a remake, and as far as ports go, I think there should be no exclusives. But that's not how business works. I believe that all games should be available on all platforms, hardware willing, and also all games should be crossplay and all platforms should be backwards compatible, fully backwards compatible. So if you're keeping your exclusives, you should be able to play the ports from last gen. Again, this is usually just another cash grab. All of this being said, they will keep making ports, remakes, and remasters, and I keep buying them. And then the last one for me is, sorry if I pronounced this name wrong, Super AWOD Arcade on Instagram says, I love them, but I think the Switch doesn't have a distinct identity in my mind because of the plethora of Wii U ports and downgraded ports from consoles. I disagree with that. I think maybe in the beginning that could have been said, but I mean, we have bangers like Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 3, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Astral Chain, Super Mario Maker 2, Luigi's Mansion 3, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now, I know not every game is for every gamer, but I mean, those are some freaking bangers, man. Some of them will probably go down as some of the best games ever made. I know Breath of the Wild certainly will. And it seems like ports and remakes and remasters are just going to be an industry standard at this point. I mean, if people keep buying them, companies are going to keep making them. And that is it for me. Your turn.
I got some good ones here. Jet_115, all he said was, I want my Zelda collection. So I know someone else on this podcast that is very interested in that.
Who?
My guy Brendan Taylor 38 said, depends. I typically don't mind when it comes to things that I didn't have a chance to play. And for things that I have played before, I'd like to see some serious upgrades in additions. Super Awad Arcade said, I think the multi-gen remasters like Final Fantasy X for PS3 and 4 are great because of better frame rates / resolution. Benjamin14325 said, I like some of the remasters, but they don't beat the original game. Absolutely. Al.pdf, I prefer remakes over remasters and ports, but some remakes are worse than the original. Sad face. Accurate.
Very true.
AKA Big Cozy. It's actually a friend of mine from around here. In my opinion, part of what gives a lot of nostalgia to old games is the unbalanced gameplay. And then he said, do you think when they make a remaster they should rebalance the game or just the graphics? What do you think, Hannah?
I guess it depends on the game. Like, I know a lot of people like everything to be original in the way that it was, but sometimes, games need fixing. Like, sometimes there's things that, aren't, I don't know. So, I mean, some people, it's divided whether people like things or not, but sometimes there's things that are just really wonky that should probably be changed.
The Crash trilogy, I think it was fine the way it was. They probably didn't need to change the mechanics, and they definitely did a little bit, whether you can tell or not. But something like Pokemon Gen 1 and 2, yeah, I think that they definitely needed to rebalance the game a lot, and the graphics. So I'm going to have to hit you with a it depends there. Tom Stees said, I try to limit myself to one copy of a game, so I typically don't invest in remasters or remakes or even variants. I was with you until you said variants there, Tom. That's always a big thing for me. I don't buy many games I already own. I'm like really cautious saying that right now because I'm thinking like, crap, have I bought anything recently? Most of the time, Tony Hawk 1 and 2 was a gift, and I was pretty confident I wasn't going to buy that game, but I was excited to have it, I'm not going to lie. I don't know, most of the time I'm with you there, Tom. I don't like to buy remakes or remasters. I feel you, man. Last one, Froke1104. Personally, I haven't played a bad port or remake yet, and the ones I have played are always fun and fair. Yeah, I've played very few bad remakes myself.
Yeah, me either. Like when I was thinking of ones that I've played that are bad, I mean,
maybe we just avoid bad games.
Yeah, I mean, if it's bad, I just put it down and say, nope, not gonna play that.
Right.
I'm gonna waste my time on that. I have better things to play.
Like, one that comes to mind is The Secret of Mana that came out in, like, 2015. It was apparently trash. I haven't played it because I heard it was trash.
Oh, and then I have another point, which I probably should have said before, but I was talking with someone that had responded, and they said that there are just games that should never be touched. I was like, huh, that's, like, never be remastered or anything like that. And I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. And then I was thinking about it, and to me, it seems like the first Super Mario should not be touched. It's perfect as it is. It should not be remastered or anything. What do you think? Are there games that you have that are just classic and should never be touched?
So, what I want to say is Super Metroid. People have mentioned lately, and probably for a long time, that they want a remake of Super Metroid, but I think it's a 10 out of 10 game. I don't think a single thing needs to be done to that game. Not a remake, but at the same time, if they upgraded it with, like, just graphically, I wouldn't complain. But
yeah,
as far as remaking that game goes, absolutely not.
I don't know. I just think that, I mean, Super Mario is it's a classic. It's a timeless classic, and I think it's perfect the way it is.
That's a very special case where you can't mess with that game.
Yeah. I guess. But that's the only game that I could think off the top of my head that'd be like, nope, don't touch it. It would not benefit from any kind of balancing or fixing of any kind.
What about Ocarina?
Nope. I mean, I played the... Shoot, are they remasters or remakes on the 3DS? But, they played different. I don't know if that makes any sense, but, like, the way he walked around and the way he moved, it was different than the original. And I remember thinking that. And then someone responded and said that they hate those games because it just feels different. It's like, huh. Now think about it.
It's not just the fact that you're using a D-pad?
Oh, no. Definitely not. I don't think so.
Made you think about it, though.
It did make me think about it for a second, but no, I don't think so. He still just moved different.
Yeah, I haven't played those on the 3DS. Well, do you have anything else you want to throw in here, Hannah?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all.
Very solid episode on ports, remakes, and remasters. Reminds me of that show.
Lions and Tigers and Bears. Oh my.
No, that freaking Guy Fieri show. Fieri.
Oh, drivers.
Like,
dine-ins, drivers, and dive. There it is. Triple D, man. Triple D.
There you go. So what are your thoughts on ports, remakes, and all of that nonsense? What games do you want to see remade and ported? Let us know in the comments. And, let me know if Breath of the Wild on Switch is a port, because I don't think it is. But
it's definitely a port.
Let me know what you think. That should be the very first thing that you consider commenting, all right? Everybody listening right now. Thank you guys for listening to the show. Thank you for responding to our Instagram posts, our story posts.
Yes, thank you.
And we will try to incorporate those types of responses in the future as well. And, where can the people find you, Hannah?
Game Bro Advances P on Instagram.
I am at Bird Dog Gaming everywhere, and we really appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time for episode 15 of the Unlockable Podcast.
See ya.
Later.